something that is sometimes overlooked. Like there's a science and an art to coming up with the right set of assumptions and then verifying that, validating those with the data, or, coming up with the constraints within which a certain problem can be solved. So I think the biggest parallel for me is like the problem solving approach or framework that you come with both for physics problems and data problems.
Welcome back to the Insights by Design podcast. We're joined today by Shantona Tuli. Shantona, how are you?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here. We're thrilled that you could join us today. For those who haven't come across you yet, could you just please give a quick introduction of yourself and an overview of Upsolver?
Absolutely. Yeah, so hi, I'm Shantona Tuli. I work as head of data at Upsolver. Upsolver is the control center for Apache Iceberg-based lakehouses. And my background is I worked in physics and NLP and just general data science from like an analytics point of view. And now I'm sort of thinking more strategically about product as well as data. So my job is to build the best version of data tooling that we possibly can for data practitioners like ourselves.
I love it. It's becoming more and more important. And Upsolver is a really great company which enables the efficient movement of data from production to downstream systems, as you mentioned. But given the many use cases, is there any one Upsolver implementation that you're really excited about?
So Upsolver excels at two things. We have a really strong product in place for data movement, as you said, moving data especially from production sources that generate data at really high scales. So change data capture, database replication, event streams like Kafka, Kinesis, etc. And then also like any sort of deeply nested data structures that may be sitting in files somewhere. These are the kinds of high volume, high scale data that we are really good at ingesting into warehouses, lakes, wherever you want the data to land. We even have a couple of integrations with real-time analytics platforms like ClickHouse and Elasticsearch. So that's one thing that we're very good at, like moving the high-scale data like on time, highly reliable, accounting for late arriving data, making sure data is exactly once. Those are some of the strengths. And then on the other side, and a more recent announcement has been about this control center around Apache Iceberg. So, as you know, Apache Iceberg is awesome, and it's seeing a lot of adoption across the industry. So what we're doing is the thing that you want to avoid when you're moving to the lake house from a warehouse is sort of vendor lock-in. So it's definitely not that like your data is going to be in your open format, open table format, open data format. But when you have so many different engines accessing the lake for different use cases, which is the lake house vision, is to have this shared storage, then you can have sort of contested writes on the tables, like especially when you have high concurrency updates to the data or high concurrency reads. So Upsolver is sort of the layer that can rise above the noise from everyone else, and like instead of things fighting each other, it can be the control layer that sort of says what how the concurrency controls should be set per table, what the retention policies are, tag management. And we do a lot of, because we've been dealing with high scale data for a long time, we do a lot of optimizations in the background, like small file compaction, manifest cleanup, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the other set of strengths. So we've sort of merged these, our streaming high-scale data background with this very cool open data format to provide like an end-to-end, what I like to call like optimized data from ingestion to query.
I love that. I mean, it's becoming more and more important, as you noted. The vision of the lake house is, shared data access, but it comes at a price if you don't have the right controls in place. And we just met in person at Dremio's Subsurface Data Lake Conference, and I really loved your talk where you spoke about strategies for shared table management and observability in the interoperable lake houses. From Subsurface, what was maybe your favorite memory or insight from that conference?
I loved it. I loved the conference. And I actually went in with low expectations just because in general, vendor conferences can be sort of, hit or miss, especially with the larger ones. And I'm not a big fan of the larger vendor conferences. And of course, Dremio has done a very good job of having the Subsurface brand above like the Dremio brand for these conferences. So I think that's great. But I went in kind of a little bit worried or trepidatious around, whether the content was going to be truly, community, truly contributed from the community or like very kind of single track. And I really enjoyed it. Very well put together conference, very well organized. People were amazing, great venue, and the talks were also great. You had, practitioners, other sponsors and stuff. So Upsolver was there as a sponsor as well. We had this booth and just great conversations with folks that are actually using Iceberg or getting started with Iceberg and just like are very into this open lake format and wants to learn everything there is to learn and how to manage it well. So I think my favorite, I did really very much enjoy giving my talk, which is a silly thing to say. But beyond that, I think my favorite were the conversations that I had sort of, it was a smallish conference as well. So like, really good one-on-one conversations, just sort of in that open space. That was like this gathering area, and also at the Upsolver booth, ran into familiar faces like yourself and a few other folks, and really just talked about where data tooling is headed, which I think is a very, it's always been an interesting question because we're always evolving our data infrastructure, the way we move data, the way we handle data, process data. And now with like LLMs in there as well, like where is data tooling, data infrastructure, data engineering going? Those conversations are always super fun for me because I get to learn a lot and get different perspectives.
That's one of the magic things about in-person conferences is making those expected and unexpected connections. It's a lot of fun, and it was great to meet you in person. And one of the themes at the conference was analytics. And Sundar Kumar, who's the CEO at Dremio, he spoke about changing the physics of analytics. And for many, this is a metaphor, but for you, it may be more visceral. As someone who holds a PhD in physics, what do you think of when people compare virtual data movement to physics?
Oh, was not expecting that question. I'll have to dig into the specific comparisons or allegories that Sundar, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Sundar was making. But I could definitely, like, I've always drawn themes between physics and data and sort of the work that we do as physicists and the work that we do as data professionals. So, it's about for me, it's about the scientific method. It's about statistics, making sound decisions based on what the data are saying. And also, like, there's, I think, something that is sometimes overlooked. Like, there's a science and an art to coming up with the right set of assumptions and then verifying that, validating those with the data, or, coming up with the constraints within which a certain problem can be solved. So I think the biggest parallel for me is like the problem solving approach or framework that you come with both for physics problems and data problems.
I love that. And as you mentioned, there is a science and an art. And as a former product manager, you often have to make those decisions around what features to pursue, what priorities to have. And what's your process for deciding the priorities of what to pursue next?
For me, it's about keeping my ears to the ground on what problems folks are facing, what pains they're facing, what problems they're trying to solve, and also what's coming down the pipeline in the market and in terms of technology, in terms of advancements. So, and it's about being sort of agile as well around making shifts when there need to be shifts. So, I mean, we're a startup, and I specialize in startups at this point, I should say. So, that nimbleness of where we have this vision, we're building something today, these are the needs. And honestly, that can change in a 3 to 6 month time frame fairly easily. So being able to react to that, but also sort of stay true to the customer base and audience base that you have built, so that you're not like pivoting all the time or transitioning all the time. So like, what are your core values, core strengths as a product? What are your core features, and how do you incorporate where the industry is moving today into your product? Because one thing that I'm very strongly against is sort of getting on a hype train and building for the sake of building something. So I always push back on, okay, this is hot. How do we do this? How do we get this into our product? That's a good question to ask, but the prior should be not that we need to get this new hot thing into our product, but rather like, let's see if there is a fit here and what that means and what the ROI is going to be for pursuing that integration and so forth. So yeah, what's worked and what I'm learning, obviously, and sort of still figuring out and trying to do is talking to a ton of unfortunately, I have a lot of friends who are ML engineers and data scientists, and I mean, of course, I do data work myself. And sort of pulling all of that together and really figuring out where the pain is and what we can do to solve it.
And with the advancing pace of innovation and, as you noted, the constant hype cycle of new technologies, do you have any favorite forums or resources to keep track of current trends?
It's a personal forum for me, like personal relationships, interpersonal relationships, having those conversations. So a lot of my my personal differentiator for what I know and understand about the data community, the data industry, data tooling is actually like private Slack channels and private, over drinks or over coffee conversations with folks. I love reading, and obviously we're all sort of on the internet all the time. And we get voices on social, and we get articles. I do make it a point to read detailed articles, not just skim everything. So I'll read a certain number of per week. I'll read a certain number of articles that are just for learning something deeply. I don't do this as much anymore, but I obviously, coming from an academic/research background, I used to read a ton of research papers, and I still do some of that, especially when I was working in NLP. And NLP is still, of course, very, very prominent, very at the forefront of where we're going with technology. And reading those papers and understanding what the technology is doing beyond, oh, this is now a thing, like attention is a thing in NLP model. Okay, what does that mean? How does that work? How do transformers work, et cetera, et cetera? So it's, for me, it's those academic sources. It's those, it's a dedication to reading deeper articles with the kind of attention that they demand, that they require. And then thirdly, having conversations, ongoing discourses with folks who are taking on big data or small or medium data challenges at various companies in various settings.
That's great. I just spoke with Josh Starmer, who also is a doctorate, and he's known for really simplifying machine learning concepts, and he has a similar process of going back to the original academic papers when he's trying to learn something new, and he finds that helps him understand it deeply and then to convey it clearly to others.
Yeah, it also keeps you sharp. Like,
yes.
Sometimes you read a paper and like, oh, that went over my head. I'm not following these math steps. So you can take another step back and sort of put all of that together. Because, I mean, it takes like the kind of simplifications that you make when you're writing a paper, especially when you have to like fit it into a smaller number of pages to get the point across. You're making simplifying assumptions, simplifications, mathematical notation that's like kind of representative of something larger. And that stuff is easy to forget once you're past those years of college or past those years of grad school. So it really, for me, it keeps me on my toes as far as, okay, what is this tensor algebra again? It's keeping that fresh.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I teach grad courses in data science at a couple universities, and that's the reason I do it. I love the students, but also they ask me questions that I wasn't prepared for, and I have to go do research to figure it out. They're always asking why, or what about this? I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know. let me look. And as the head of data at Upsolver, you do have a lot of media appearances, and this isn't your first time on camera. So during your time at UC Davis, you appeared in an IMAX movie, The Secrets of the Universe, which happened to win the Best Physics Movie at the 2020 Vienna Science Film Festival, which I went and Googled, and it is a big deal. So how has that filming experience helped you as you've become more of a public personality?
Oh, great question. The experience has certainly helped, just like having, gone through it, in the sense of you sort of, as a viewer, you're sort of like, okay, they filmed this thing and they practiced this, or they're acting or something like that. And then when you're on the other side of it, so obviously it's not a film where we were acting. Like, we were acting to a certain extent, because you do have to take retakes of the same shot. But as far as the material goes, it's just what we were doing. So we were at CERN, physically, waiting for the data to come in, looking at the data, doing the quality validation or analyzing the data. These things were happening, and that's the thing that we wanted to document. So it's a documentary film, sort of interweaving today's physics research with the advancements that we've had over the last couple of centuries. So it also highlights historical figures, physicists, chemists, etc. So I think my favorite thing about the movie was the fact that this is a real representation of real scientists, right? We didn't it just features our research group, which has white men. It also has me. Our PI he's still the PI of the group. I'm not in it anymore. He's a brown man. So all of these different, that's what science looks like, and that's what scientists look like, and that's what we're representing. We didn't go searching for, other people from different backgrounds or something like that. So it's very real, very organic, and I think through that filming process, I learned a lot about the how cameras work and how the sound system works, and where you have to be, and what a B-roll is and things like that. That fact that you have to put little light thingies on your laptop if you want your face to show up as someone is recording you. So all of these cool things, and that experience was certainly helpful in making me more comfortable with getting in front of a camera and sort of talking about my experiences and what I do. But on the other hand, I've always been extroverted and sort of outgoing, and I love talking to people, and I love engaging in discussion. So I think a lot of it comes very naturally to me, and I mean I recognize that that's a privileged place to come from in that sense, if you're trying to be a public speaker, or if you're trying to be in the public eye. But I have so much fun with it. Of course, I get nervous, especially. I think for podcasts, it's a much better fit for me, because I like to speak sort of off the cuff. I'm not, scripting or rehearsing. I get a little bit more nervous when going to give big talks to big audiences, but once I have my slides down and my narrative down, so I don't do rehearsals ever. I don't rehearse my slides. I just make them and think about what narrative I want, and then I keep working on my slides. So keep working on that narrative until I go on stage. So, and once I have that, and I know what I'm going to say, which sometimes I procrastinate a little too much on, but once I have that, then it's, I know how it's going to go, or I know how I'm planning for it to go. So you learned a lot about me just now, but I enjoy doing talks and podcasts and things, and it's certainly been rewarding to be able to do it in a way that fits in with my day job, it fits in with what I get paid to do, and sort of helping put Upsolver's brand out there. And it's also great to have had that opportunity to be on an IMAX screen for a physics movie.
I love that. And you are a fantastic speaker and a teacher. And it seems like this has been a pattern for you. You were the first student information literacy peer tutor at Trinity University. Then you went on to work briefly with a social services nonprofit in Bangladesh. You served as a physics teaching staff at UC Davis, where you taught analytical mechanics, electronic instrumentation, and nuclear physics, among other courses. And more recently, you co-organized the Women in Machine Learning and Data Science. What have these experiences as a teacher and a mentor and a volunteer taught you or helped you as you progressed through your career?
Well, you went back far in the research. That's great. It is the biggest thing that I've learned is how to learn better, and the ways in which when I'm talking to someone, when I'm trying to teach them something, or when I'm trying to mentor someone, how much that helps me learn to do both the teaching better and the thing better. So, I mean, this is, most academics or most professors and teachers will say this too, like you're sort of every time that you go back and teach some material, you're sort of learning it deeper. I mean, I'm sure that stops being true if you've been doing it for, 40 years or something, maybe, I don't know. But going back to why, and as you said, like you teach as well. So like the why are not the whys that your students will ask are sometimes not the same whys that you've been asking. So it like forces you to explore new and different directions. So yeah, it's been really rewarding. Like I think I've definitely gained a lot more from any of the teaching or volunteering opportunities that I've been a part of than I've been able to give. And the other thing that has been really rewarding is to work with folks of different backgrounds and sometimes underrepresented backgrounds. So I was, I worked sort of with the Women in Machine Learning and Data Science community nonprofit for a couple of years. Like I wasn't the main organizer or anything, but just like being there, part of that group, and thinking about who to bring in as a speaker. How do we, how do we set up the event? Get a lot of folks to show up and think about the themes that we think are important, or like learn from them what they think are important as they are, sort of figuring out their career in technology as women. Or other minorities as well. These are the kinds of things that you don't always get to think about as a data scientist, right? But it's through engaging in those communities, because it's data adjacent. Like we're talking about data and ML communities. So that sort of coming at it from that angle is really helpful. And in a similar vein, I've always worked on ERGs, employee resource groups at the companies that I've worked at as well, especially for particularly for the women's groups, women and non-binary groups that have been a part of a few other ERGs as well. And again, it's like that sort of community, having the discourse going, talking about the problems that we face, the biases that are hidden, the biases that are more evident, how different people navigate that. And sometimes like you have the best of intentions, but you still like are making someone uncomfortable or something like that. So all those like more like less hard sciencey and more like social sciencey things are, the more I think about them, the more I engage in those discourses, the more I grow as a person.
It's impressive, and I'm sure it's benefited you as a leader, and that your teams and Upsolver in general, and those who interact with you are all benefiting from you taking the proactive approach of learning from diverse people and understanding different perspectives. And this is incredibly important in industry. And the move from academia to industry is really difficult for many academics, but you've done it very gracefully. What advice would you give other academics or PhD candidates who are considering a move to industry?
First off, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. The advice that I generally give is to spend the time figuring out how your existing knowledge and work experience maps to the knowledge and experience, the kind of work that you're going to be required to do in the kinds of jobs that you're looking to land. So this paid off really well for me, coming out of a very rigorous, scientifically rigorous PhD program where we're dealing with massive data sets, doing all sorts of ML and reconstruction algorithms. That I wasn't gonna let that be a side note to my story, as I get in on some entry level job in data, because I was working with data. I was a data expert, and I wanted to be recognized as that. So I really spent the last maybe 6 to 9 months as I was finishing up my work at CERN to find those like mappings, the skills that I knew I had. What are they called in industry? How are they perceived in industry? Which sort of functions do they factor into? I led a team. I did sprint, essentially, we didn't call it sprints, but I managed sprint cycles, and when we needed to spike versus when we needed to go and revisit, refactor code, all of these things. So I got really good at talking about the work that I was doing, had done, in terms of the work that the person that I was interviewing with, who was interviewing me, would understand, would use. So that's been my biggest personal learning from that journey, and that's what I usually say, especially for folks who are in grad school and thinking about what's next. One thing that's true, especially in physics, but I know that it's true in other fields as well, is the number of people who are getting PhDs is not the same number of professorships that are out there. And not that everyone is getting a PhD for that goal. Like, for instance, I wanted to get a PhD because I wanted to get a PhD, not because I necessarily wanted to be a professor. So it's not, this pyramid thing. It doesn't have to be about rejection, right? But you couldn't get a professorship, so you went into industry. There are lots of good reasons for different kinds of people, different personalities, etc., to have a better natural fit in industry. So I think that's another thing to think about as you are figuring out what's next, especially if you're in grad school, or even if you're an undergrad and sort of finishing up, is what's going to give you the most joy and fulfillment. Like, what is it about the work that you're doing today that you enjoy the most, that you can transfer out to a different position out in industry, and that will help sort of make that transition easier and more natural, if there's a thread that you can follow from where you are today to where you think you want to be in 5-10 years.
That's such good advice. You should write a guide on that, because I know that there's a lot of threads of academics scared to leave or don't know how to leave. And I think your advice is also applicable to other industries, military folks who are looking to join a new industry as well. I think this is fantastic advice.
Thank you.
Well, Shantona, it's been a pleasure, and we've got a lot of exciting things going on in 2024. Is there any one thing in 2024 that you're really excited about?
Yeah, no, I like it. I like the broadness of that question, openness. I am excited about where we are, like the advancements that we're having in terms of ML. I really don't like calling it AI, because I think it's just misused. So I think that from a scientific and technological point of view, we're at a very interesting time. I want to see the multimodal generative models get better and better and do more cool things. I'm excited about that. I'm excited for Upsolver to really embrace the Apache Iceberg ecosystem and community, and sort of the biggest thing that for us is that we really know how to work with high-scale data, and bringing that to the lakehouse world, making the lakehouse more optimized, more efficient for frequently updating data, streaming data, is, I think, massive and unexplored previously. So I'm really excited to see more people use that and that come to fruition a bit more. Personally, I'm excited to watch my puppy grow. And then in the next couple of months, I'm going to be I'm going to Snowflake Summit in June, and probably Databricks and AI Summit as well. And there, the idea is to get in on the discourse around Iceberg and sort of see what experts are saying and like users are saying, practitioners, and how they're leveraging Iceberg for their various use cases. So as you know, Subsurface was that kind of discourse, And earlier this year, Upsolver hosted Chill Data Summit, which was also a community event for Iceberg practitioners and stuff. And I think that discussion is just getting better and more interesting and more varied as more people are adopting Iceberg. So what I want to do at Snowflake and Databricks is sort of walk the hallways and find the folks who are giving talks on Iceberg and who are using Iceberg and really dig into what they're doing, what the pain points are, just, extend my network of data professionals that are working with Lakehouse technology so that I can help build better solutions for them.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure that your links are below in the description. And one last hard-hitting question. What kind of puppy do you have?
So I have a Chesapeake Bay Retriever.
Oh, awesome. You're in the perfect area, too.
Exactly. Yeah. We are near the Chesapeake. We go to the Chesapeake pretty often. She loves swimming. She loves the water. And she loves chasing squirrels and rabbits and such.
I love it. Me too. See? Keeps life interesting. Well, Shantona, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you more and seeing all the engaging and interesting things that you're up to.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
You too.